Hi English literature enthusiast, are you preparing for PG TRB English exam? Then these MCQs are for you. These MCQs have been taken from the essay 4 Kinds of Meaning by I.A. Richards. I have created 100 high yield MCQs on 4 kinds of meaning by I.A. Richards. This essay, 4 Kinds of Meaning, has been given under Unit 8 Literary Criticism as 5th topic. Let's dive into today's topic. Who is the author of the essay or chapter, The 4 Kinds of Meaning? I.A. Richards. The 4 Kinds of Meaning forms part of which book? Practical Criticism. In what year was Practical Criticism published? 1929. What is the full subtitle of Practical Criticism? A study of literary judgment. According to Richards, the total meaning of an utterance is a blend of how many kinds of contributory meaning? 4. What are the 4 kinds of meaning identified by Richards? Sense, feeling, tone, intention. Sense in Richards' scheme refers to what is literally said or the items referred to. Feeling refers to answer B, the writer's or speaker's emotional attitude toward the subject. Tone refers to the speaker's attitude toward the audience or listener. Intention refers to the purposive aim or effect a speaker or writer tries to produce. Richard says we use language chiefly to direct the hearer's attention upon some state of affairs. Which function of meaning integrates sense, feeling, and tone into a single purposive act? Intention. Richards notes that intention can be either conscious or unconscious. Which of the 4 meanings is described as the whatness of a language use? Sense. Richards claims that sense is stabilized mainly by surrounding linguistic and situational context. Which meaning function governs the relation between speaker and listener? Formal, familiar, courteous, combative, etc. Tone. According to Richards, in mathematics, which function is said to be almost entirely absent? Feeling. In which type of writing does Richards say sense is put first and given priority? Scientific treatise. In a scientific treatise, whose feelings, according to Richards, may not interfere with the sense the writer's own. In a scientific treatise, the writer's tone is chiefly determined by academic convention. In popular science writing, which function tends to interfere with the others? According to Richards, intention. Why does Richards say popular science writing sacrifices precise statement of sense? Because general intelligibility becomes more important. In political speech, which function does Richards say becomes predominant? Intention. In political speech, feeling functions mainly as an instrument to express causes, policies, leaders, and opponents. In political speech, what does tone chiefly establish? The speaker's relation with the audience. Where does Richards say we find the clearest examples of one function shifting into another? Conversation. Richards says it is harder to obtain from readers plain statements about poetry than expressions of feelings towards it and its author. Many apparent statements about poetry, Richard argues, are actually indirect expressions of feeling, tone, and intention. What term did Richards use for the written responses of his students to unattributed poems? protocols. Richards conducted his experiment on student responses to poems at which university? Cambridge. In the practical criticism method, what information was withheld from students about the poems given to them? The author's name and period. What was the main purpose of withholding authorship from Richard's students? To make them focus on the language and meaning itself without bias. According to Richards, failure in reading a poem often occurs in any one or even all of the four functions. When a reader gobbles the sense, which function has failed? Sense. When a reader mistakes the tone of a passage, which relationship has been misjudged between speaker and audience? When a reader disregards the intention, what has the reader failed to grasp the purpose or effect the writer aimed at? Richards observes that a partial collapse in one function of meaning tends to cause aberrations in the other functions too. Which pair of critics is often called the founding fathers of new criticism? Richards and Eliot. Richards' concept of the four kinds of meaning had major influence on which critical movement? New criticism. The critical practice most associated with Richards' method, later central to new criticism, is known as close reading. With whom did Richards co-author The Meaning of Meaning? C.K. Ogden. In what year was The Meaning of Meaning first published? 1923. The meaning of meaning distinguishes between the symbolic use of language in science and the emotive use of language in poetry. In which year was Principles of Literary Criticism published? 1924. Principles of Literary Criticism primarily explores Richards' psychological theory of value and emotive language. The famous semantic triangle associated with Richards and Ogden consists of symbol, thought or reference and referent. Which of Richards' later works focuses specifically on rhetoric? The Philosophy of Rhetoric. In the 1930s, Richards worked extensively with Ogden on developing Basic English, a simplified English vocabulary system. Approximately how many words did the Basic English system employ? 850. Which critic of an earlier era is sometimes compared to Richards for the breadth and depth of his criticism? Samuel Taylor Coleridge. Where and when was I.A. Richards born? Sandbach, Cheshire, 1893. At which Cambridge College was Richards educated and later a lecturer? Magdalen College. In which year did Richards die? 1979. Richards served as a lecturer in English and moral sciences at Cambridge, roughly during which period? 1922 to 1929. Richards believed that reading literature, particularly poetry, chiefly helps readers manage psychological tensions and achieve emotional order. According to Richards' theory of value, the worth of a poem lies chiefly in its ability to bring order and clarity to thoughts and feelings. Which function of meaning is most closely tied to the propositional content or ideas conveyed by an expression? Sense. Richards states that words express nuances of interest primarily through which function? Feeling. A writer's recognition of how he stands towards those he is addressing is Richards' description of tone. Richards states that a speaker's purpose modifies his speech. This describes intention. Which function controls emphasis, shapes, arrangement, and draws attention to important elements of an utterance, intention. Richards analyzed the relative subordination of the four meanings across all of the following except, you have to note down the question, except legal contracts. According to the essay, conversation best illustrates the clearest shifts of one function being taken over by another. Which of the following is not one of the four kinds of meaning? Rhythm. Richards argues that even when feeling is not consciously intended by a speaker, it may still be present and pursued by listeners. Which discipline did Richards study that shaped his psychological approach to literary criticism? Psychology. Richards' method of giving students poems without contextual information came to be known as practical criticism. According to the essay, the first and fundamental difficulty in criticism per Richards is making out the meaning. Richards divides the difficulties of criticism into how many main types in practical criticism? Part 2, 10. Which of these best describes Richards' overall aim in distinguishing four kinds of meaning to help readers and critics avoid misinterpretation by attending to more than literal content? In Richards' framework, total meaning of a poem results from a blend of sense, feeling, tone, and intention. Which meaning function would be most affected if a reader failed to notice sarcasm directed at the audience? Tone. If a reader accurately understands the literal facts of a passage but misses the emotional coloring, which function has been missed? Feeling. According to Richards, in a man's writing of a scientific treatise, which function is clearly and adequately stated alongside sense? Intention. Richards' distinction between symbolic and emotive uses of language first appears prominently in the meaning of meaning. Which of the following genres does Richards not specifically analyze for the predominance of one function over another? Personal diary. According to Richards, the furtherance of intention in popularized science writing does what to the other functions? Inevitably interferes with them. Which term best captures Richards' idea that meaning is not fixed by shaped by surrounding context? Contextual stabilization of sense. Richards' fourfold theory of meaning is most directly applied by critics to analyze poetry and other literary texts. Which of the following statements about intention is false according to Richards? False. It is entirely unrelated to sense, feeling, and tone. Richards suggests that in exceptional subjects such as mathematics, feeling largely does not enter. The idea that language performs several tasks simultaneously is most associated with which literary form according to Richards? Poetry. What does Richards mean when he says we use words to direct our hearers' attention upon some state of affairs? Language functions to present items for the listener's consideration. According to Richards, which function is described as purposive direction that integrates the other three? Intention. What of these best distinguishes Richards' critical approach from earlier, more impressionistic criticism, emphasis on close systematic textual analysis? Richards' work is generally seen as helping shift English studies from vague appreciation toward a more scientific, logical, close analysis of text. According to Richards, in political speech, what does sense often become relative to intention, subordinated to intention? What does Richards imply happens to communication when tone is badly mismatched to the audience, meaning may be obscured or resistance provoked? Richards' study of protocols revealed that misreading typically stems from failure in one or more of the four meaning functions. Which of the following disciplines did Richards draw upon most in constructing his theory of meaning? Psychology and linguistics or semantics? What is the relationship between sense and feeling in scientific treatises per Richards? Sense is prioritized while feeling is subordinated. In popular science writing, Richards notes there is no precise statement of sense because general intelligibility for a wider audience is prioritized. Richards' four kinds of meaning are best understood as interconnected aspects that together form total meaning, which best reflects Richards' view on separating the four kinds of meaning in practice. They cannot be easily separated since they function together. Richards' analysis of language functions is often cited as an early contribution to which broader linguistic field, pragmatics and semantics. According to Richards, the writer of a scientific treatise treats his personal feelings about the subject as subordinate so as not to interfere with sense, which best summarizes Richards' overall thesis in the four kinds of meaning. Total meaning of any utterance is a blend of sense, feeling, tone, and intention. Richards' broader project of analyzing difficulties of criticism appears in which part of practical criticism? Part 2. Which statement best reflects Richards' conclusion about predominance of function in language use generally? The subject and intention of a piece determine which function becomes predominant. Overall, the four kinds of meaning is significant in literary criticism chiefly because of it introduced the four function model of meaning that underpins close reading and new criticism. After learning the essay Four Kinds of Meaning by A. Richards, practice these questions. First of all, as soon as you watch this video, if you don't understand, you can study Four Kinds of Meaning essay thoroughly. After that, come here and watch it again. You will be able to understand. If you like this video, like, share and subscribe. I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Until then, stay tuned.